Sense Show. You can't dodge the Hodge.
Live from the great American Southwest, coming to you in the rural deserts outside Phoenix, Arizona. Hi, everybody. This is Dave Hodges, host of the Common Sense Show, coming to you proudly on the Republic Broadcasting Network. And thanks to Dr. Sam Kennedy for that very thrilling and enlightening program. And, of course, you've got Dave Hodges and the Common Sense Show now. And following us, you've got Terry Anderson and What's the Latest at the Border. But right now, we really have a great show for you. Back by popular demand to talk about his latest webbot, and he'll be joining us right after the first break, is Clif. And as we know, Clif tends to, shall we say, raise your sensitivities, maybe even frighten us a little bit. But his track record is impeccable. His delivery is entertaining. But his message may not be one that you want the little kids to hear. So like I'm doing with my soon-to-be 9-year-old boy, I have him out of the room, and Mom is instructed not to let him listen to his dad on the radio tonight. And I've also got further bad news. We will not be doing our Under the Radar news segment tonight, and I know that will disappoint some of you. But I have good news. We will be having Annie DeRiso on tonight to help me conduct the interview with Clif. And as you know, Annie is our chief correspondent for Under the Radar news segment. So without further ado, let's go to Tennessee and welcome Annie to the show. Hi, Annie. Are you with us? Oh, there you are.
Yes, I'm here, and it's definitely going to be a lock and load night.
Well put. Well put. But as we know, Clif came out with his latest WebBot report, and he's got quite a few appearances lined up, doesn't he, Annie? And are we kind of at the front of the line on this?
Yes, go to Half Past Human, and you can see his interviews that are coming up, yes. And there's also a link on there where you can go and listen to some of his past shows to fill in, because, I mean, it would take a 6-hour show to do the whole report that he's got tonight. So,
well, no question. And
yeah.
We're really grateful to Clif to agree to come on because his report just came out this week, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I encourage everybody to go to Half Past Human and order the report. You can just send him a check if you want, and he'll send it right out to you if you don't want to use PayPal. But it's 58 pages, and it is a humdinger, for lack of a better word.
Yes, from what I've read, I made sure that I told my lovely wife, Nora, not to let my son, JT, listen to the show, as I just indicated a few moments ago. This is hair-raising stuff. And
yes,
I read some of what you had sent me and forwarded to me on the report. And we've always talked about these days coming. And you and your late significant other, Bill Pollack, and I used to spend many late hours talking about these things. And I think Bill would be quite amazed, as we are right now, that we're on the precipice of great social change. I just told some of my students the other day, without even addressing specific issues, that they live in the time that history books are going to devote quite a bit of attention to.
And monuments built, and I think Bill would be very proud of us. I mean, when we started this show a year ago this month, we had no idea what we were getting into, did we?
No, we didn't. In fact, happy birthday to us in the Common Sense Show. It was 1 year ago today that we joined the Republic Broadcasting Network, and we're eternally grateful to John Stadtmiller for this great opportunity and the great service that he is also providing to the American people. But, yeah, it's been 1 year, Annie, and it's hard to believe we've done 50 shows. And to answer your question, no, I didn't quite know what I was getting into. When I was doing local radio here in Wickenburg, Arizona, we talked about a lot of things like the North American Union and the corrupt nature of the Federal Reserve System and how we needed to abolish it. But there wasn't really these impending timelines that were crushing down upon us, threatening to immediately change our lives. And we're there. We're right here at this point in time. And when we come back from the break, we're going to find out just how close we really are. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be back with Clif from the WebBot and my co-host tonight, Annie DeRiso, after a word from these sponsors. Power to the people. That's what we try to make the Common Sense all about. And joining me as co-host tonight is our favorite under-the-radar news correspondent. In fact, she's our only under-the-radar news correspondent, Annie DeRiso. And joining us for the balance of the show will be Clif from the WebBot. And we've had Clif on several times since the summer. And with each appearance that Clif makes on our show, his predictions seem to get closer and closer in their inevitability, and they seem to become more accurate and more crystal clear. And because this 2 hours is going to go very quickly, and we really need about 6 hours to do this interview, let's not waste time. Let's go straight to the West Coast, to an unknown location. I'll let Clif tell you where he is if he wants to, and introduce Clif from the WebBot. Hi, Clif. How you doing?
Doing just fine. I'm actually out here in the Pacific Northwest and near latitude 47 north and 122 west. It's frozen here today and a little bit snowy, so...
There's that cold weather all over the country.
Yeah, the kind of bad news for you guys, though, because it blows from where we are your direction.
Yeah, but our bad days here might get down into the 30s at night outside Phoenix. Remember, we're on the far side of the sun.
That's true.
So,
That's true.
So we do pretty well.
We were so protected, but we've been having days that are 4 degrees.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
It's a little on the chilly side, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is. And so I guess that'll give those people at the Global Warming Conference at Copenhagen something to talk about.
You know, the real problem with all of this, of course, is that it's now muddied the whole issue of climate change, because climate change is what we're facing. Whether it's going to go cold or hot is anybody's guess. And, in fact, there was a debate among scientists in the late 40s and early 50s as to the oscillation factor, which was first proposed by Isaac Asimov. And Isaac Asimov said, gee, guys, whenever we head into an ice age or into a death spiral, such as in Venus, there's a period of time in which we oscillate between extreme cold and extreme hot temperatures. And if we end up settling on extreme hot, we're all kind of screwed, because then the oceans get to the point where they can't support life. And really the good thing is to have an ice age. It really is what refreshes the oceans, which starts our whole ecosystem in a curative process, if you will. And so now that the debate about climate change is all caught up in the politics, when in fact the climate is changing. It doesn't matter how much you want to disagree with it, whether it's getting warmer or colder is kind of immaterial, and that's also a local effect. The real issue is the amount of precipitation in the atmosphere, how much it can hold in relation to the amount of carbon dioxide and the temperature. And we're getting to a point where we're at a huge extreme, and if we're lucky, as a planet, we'll go into an ice age. And that's really the best thing we could hope for all the way around. There's rather some nasty news, though, I hear from, and I'll have to read the book. I haven't gotten to it yet, from the guy who wrote the Fire and Ice, not by fire, but by ice.
Robert Felix, yes.
Correct,
Felix.
Yeah, I was trying to think of his name. I'm terrible with authors, but I remember content pretty well. But in any event, he's got a new book out about magnetics, about magnetic reversals, and I guess one of the precursors is indeed a period where you get extreme cold in a particular set of latitudes relative to where the center of the pole is, the magnetic pole is located. And, of course, we're sliding right into that.
So we could have a magnetic shift that leads to a crustal shift?
Yes, and here's the real problem. I mean, there's no sense in avoiding the issues. There's many different things now pointing to a set of circumstances relative to geology that we never really figured could exist. It used to be that everybody said, well, you cannot have a crustal shift without extra mass coming into the solar system. We know that that is not true anymore, because a magnetic push, sort of a giant magnet pushing a little magnet, could send a little magnet clear across the table if you brought the big magnet close to it on a repelling force very suddenly. And it's that magnetic whirring around in the inner core of the Earth that can cause the crust to shift because of other factors. We also have issues relative to where the ice is located and so on that all bring us back to the idea that a really worst-case scenario of a magnetic shift leading to a crustal shift is indeed probable. The level of probability is anybody's guess, but anytime you start getting into denial about that probability, you must take into account the actions of the powers that be, who are out there desperately building doomsday shelters and all of this kind of thing.
And playing with our weather.
Yes, and that may well be a desperate attempt to throw up shields against this effect or who knows what.
Well, in your WebBot report, I believe you say something in there about storms disrupting transshipments of food.
Yes, indeed, and it's going to get much worse.
Can you talk about that?
The issue for us is that it appears to be in the bot reports we get I don't want to say this, a collection of data that seems to indicate that a horizontal banding is going to start occurring within our atmosphere, that there's going to be a major change in that regard. Nowadays, we might sit here and we, as a regular human on the planet, you have your local weather effect, but you're not necessarily aware of events that form larger patterns around that weather. In other words, I'm getting the wind here off of the Pacific, but I'm not really aware of how it's affecting the Chinese or whether it's coming down off the Russian mountains or that kind of thing. Where our wind is coming from, to a certain extent, is rather variable. Sometimes we get Pineapple Express, other times we get something from the Gulf of Alaska, different effects and moisture, cold, etc. The data seems to suggest that this is going to get into a period of horizontal settling, if you will, such that we'll start getting storms that will just pretty much stick to a latitude, very much like we would see in Saturn or the other gas giant, Jupiter, and go trucking around that latitude over and over and over again. And so, for instance, if you had a storm form in the upper 40s, where I'm at, it might take only 4 or 5 weeks to go trucking around the planet, depending on how fast it's pushed. But the idea seems to be a level of extreme storms that will settle in on temperate zones that will most affect developed worlds. We seem to have less indication for stuff around the equator, but the temperate zones are going to get really, really hammered here. And it's an issue of precipitation. And once again, every time we get these kind of things, we like to go on out and validate what's happening in reality. And sure enough, we're finding that the atmosphere is at all-time highs for the amount of water that's out there relative to the carbon dioxide. The whole issue on the political side of, humans are out there breathing out too much carbon dioxide through their machinery or through their persons or their cows or whatever, to a certain extent is spurious, simply because a couple of good burps from a methane hydrate layer in the Pacific could outdo us all hundreds of times over. However, it is true. We're at the highest level of carbon dioxide saturated into the air that has ever occurred insofar as we're able to measure back, given our current understanding of the ice. And that's basically where they're taking it from, is ice cores, and that can be a little spurious. I hate to get too divergent into weird science here, but if you believed that the Antarctica had been covered by ice for millions of years, then you could make certain assumptions about how fast that ice accumulated and mark off little millimeter bands and so on. However, if you believed that ice was, say, less than 100,000 years old, then that throws your patterns in terms of what you think climate was like back when total into disarray. And we're probably into that latter state. We probably really don't know how long that ice has been there. Some sections of it may have only been there 11,000 years, and yet we're making the assumption that it was there for millions.
Isn't this precipitous of a pole shift that could be coming?
Correct.
Well, tell us about that.
Well,
you have these change in weather patterns, and so pick it up from there, please.
Yeah, the change in weather patterns is not limited to the planet Earth. We're finding even on the moon that